Just wanted to share with you a concept that I discovered while taking some lessons here on LinkedIn Learning, which I highly recommend, by the way. It's not an advertisement or an endorsement, just a recommendation. So, I thought honestly that this HTML images and figures lesson would just be a review, and for the most part, it has been for me. However, I discovered something that I find very useful, especially with helping people load images on different screen resolutions, anywhere from the huge 1920 by 1080 down to the 1024 by 768 on down to the smallest cell phone available. Now, my mentality for this, for the most part, was um, you know just to load one image, right, and make that image responsive no matter what the size, you know, for the most part. I mean, I could also load with CSS. I can also load other images with media queries and do some display nuns, display inline block, etc. So display certain images depending on the resolution and then change it. And that's kind of tedious, right? And so sometimes you use this code like this, which is like Bootstrap's responsive design, CSS, where it takes an image and makes it responsive no matter what screen resolution. And that sounds like a good idea, but what if it's a huge image? Some of the problems that you can see with that and that can happen with that, according to this article, is hopefully you can see the problem here. Providing much larger images does not leave everyone else unaffected. They still have to download them. This costs them bandwidth, and it costs you bandwidth. It also slows down their page load times and uses up more of their computer's memory. So it also slows down their page load times and uses more of their computer's memory. So this has to do with performance, and really, honestly, you don't want to kind of mess with people's, the performance of the site and their memory that they're using, and the download cost and things like that, and bandwidth that they're using. So in order to fix that situation, you might, a solution is what I just said. You just load different images with CSS. But what if you could do that with HTML? Enter source sets. So if I come over here and you will see this example here, I'll comment out this code. And actually, I'll just leave that there because I can show you this example here. I believe it is this guy. So what is this? This is a source set example. And so what this example shows is that you can load different images, and this might look familiar to some of you who have used media queries, is you can load different images, and then those images will load depending on the browser the width of the browser and the resolution. So, for instance, you see this code here, and if I come up to this guy, you will notice that as the width gets smaller, you'll see different numbers in the bottom right-hand corner of the images. Those were put there for illustrative purposes. But what that's doing is, if I go back to the code, is, as you see, let's say we get to 800 pixels, 600 pixels, 400 pixels. It's loading up a different image depending on the width of the browser. And so that helps with load times and bandwidth, as we saw in that previous article, and just overall performance. And so when we look back here at those images, as you see, up here you can see the breakpoints. So okay, anything over 800, that's cool, but once I get under 800, it loads the 600 image, 600 pixels wide image, and then it loads the 400 pixels once I get it looks like under 600 pixels, etc. So that's really powerful, and it can be done just within the HTML. Now, another example of a way that you can do this is you can come here. We'll look at this. Now, when you do source sets, for the most part, you always want to put in this code here, which is the viewport code, and has to do with zooming and things like that, and stuff to do with CSS pixels, how many device pixels are in the CSS pixels. So you can look up stuff about viewport. I'll put some reference to that later. But for the purposes of this lesson, I wanted to show you different ways that you can do the source set. So for instance, this image right here is going to, it's like a 600 pixel image, right? And it's going to load. What this means right here is 900 VW. That means view width. So that means 90% of the view width. So when we're coming here, no matter what size I make, no matter what size that I make the viewport, if you will, or the size of the browser or the resolution, it'll always be 90%. I'm talking about referring to this image there. So when we go back to the code, this basically means that it's always going to be 90%. And then when it does have certain breakpoints, for instance, when it gets to 600, it loads this image here, the 600 pixel width, it loads this image right there. And when it gets to 300, it loads that image there. And so that can be compared to this way, which doesn't have to do with percentage, but actually pixels. So there's the difference there. This one has to do with pixels, and again, this looks like media queries kind of. So what that's simply saying when we're looking at the clock is when you get to 500 or less pixels, the 300 pixel image, which is right here, loads, right? And when you get, so if you're at 800, the 500 pixel image would be there, and anything over that, you're going to get the 800 pixel image. So again, we're talking about this image right here. That's what it's referring to, and that's how that image is. That's the responsive behavior of that image. So again, this is called source set. I'll leave a couple links to that, and also some information about the importance of the viewport. It's just a quick informational video about the idea of source set versus using CSS media queries, and even just using CSS to make a huge image smaller just by making it responsive, and some of the disadvantages of that. All right, so I hope you have a very good rest of your week. It looks like it's snowing here in Seattle, and I'm kind of enjoying that. It kind of makes it easier to work inside. Anyway, have a good one. Appreciate it.